James is a street musician who tries to earn his living by playing guitar and singing. He has nowhere to live and even spend the night. Often he is forced to look for food in the trash. Passers-by avoid him, as they see him as an ordinary tramp, except that he carries a guitar everywhere with him. But that's not James' biggest problem. In the past, he suffered from severe drug addiction, but now he has quit and does not intend to take up the old one anymore. James wants to start a new life, but he is left all alone with his problems. Relatives do not communicate with him because of his unpleasant past. One day, when James was once again looking for a bed for the night, a former friend of his suggested that he get in the car and have a little. Relax a little. James tries to give up banned substances, but eventually gives up. He did not know that they were sitting in someone else's car, and in the morning, they were discovered by the owner of the car. Bass managed to escape, but James himself could not be woken up in any way. He overdosed. James woke up in the hospital. His attending physician, Vale, informed him that he had barely been dragged out of the world. Also, James, in addition to intoxication, was found to have hepatitis. James promises Val that he will not break down again, and returns to the street, to a vagabond lifestyle. Meanwhile, Val met with her friend, who deals with social security issues. She asked her to provide James with a place to live, despite his dubious past. Val knows that James has a kind heart and believes in him. So James found a home. Val made sure he was all right and was about to leave. James thanked her from the bottom of his heart, because lately Val had become the closest person to him. Left alone, James rejoices like a child, because by this time he has already forgotten what hot water and a warm bed are. And before going to bed, while taking a bath, James heard strange noises in the kitchen. And he decided that thieves got into it, but it turned out that it was a big red cat who made his way through the window. He behaved like a master and was already enjoying dry cereal, which he turned over from the headset. Then James poured him some milk. He thought that the cat was lost, and decided to look for his owners in the morning. The cat stayed the night with him. And while James was sleeping, he came to his bed and purred. In the morning, James tried to find out from the neighbors if anyone had lost a red cat. But the owners were never found. Convinced that someone was looking for the pet, James let him go. During the day, he continued to play guitar for passers-by, and at some point noticed his father with his new wife. James tried to talk to his father and offered to spend Christmas together, but he just waved him off, slipping some money. Finally, he said that they could meet some other time, maybe on New Year's Eve. Near the door, James found the cat again, and this time wounded. He noticed a strange neighbor who walks dogs every day, and asked if she knew the owners of the cat. The neighbor, whose name is Betty, invited James into the house and offered to help. She gave him a business card of the vet clinic, where you can get it for free. A doctor's consultation, and where it sometimes helps. Betty said that the cat wants to be called Bob. It also turned out that the girl has a strong allergy to animals. James thanked her for her help and went with Bob to the clinic, where there was a huge queue. I had to wait until the evening, but eventually Bob was helped. However, James had to spend the last of his money on medications and missed an appointment. It's for food, for a whole week.
Decide.
At home, he tried to give Bob medicines for a long time, but without success. Then Betty came to his aid again, who easily managed to do it. There was a heart-to-heart conversation between them. James said that his parents divorced a long time ago. For a long time he lived with his mother, and his father never visited him. Growing up, James traveled all over the world. He did not dare to admit about his addiction. The next morning, he came to Val, who was unhappy that he had missed the previous meeting. James told her about the cat and about meeting Betty. Vale is worried about him, as he is afraid that he will be exposed to emotions and break down. Soon James visited the vet clinic again, where Bob underwent all the necessary procedures. James is thinking about finding good hosts for Bob who can really take care of him. And while Bob lives with him, and James begins to feel that he has a real friend, now he is not so lonely. One day, when James went to work with his guitar, Bob followed him, and even managed to sneak into the bus unnoticed. James had to take Bob with him. The other passengers were delighted with the big red cat. When James was walking down the street, Bob climbed on his back, and all the passers-by turned around and smiled at them. Some even took pictures with them. People were fascinated by Bob. This time, James gathered a huge crowd of people around him, and everyone listened to his songs with pleasure. And Bob was always there and attracted everyone's attention. James and Bob managed to earn a lot of money, and one elderly woman came up to them after the performance and shared a story about her red cat, which is no longer there. She very much loved and much missed. This was watching all of this. James' life began to improve. She and Bob have dinner together, he's always talking to his new friend. And when they were going to perform together once again, James was overtaken by the bass, which looked terrible due to withdrawal. He asked for money, and James gave him some, but at the same time, he took the word that Biss would spend it only on food. He also asked a former friend not to bother him anymore. Christmas was coming. After the performance, the same elderly woman presented Bob with canned cat food and a striped knitted scarf. Upon returning home, James met Betty, and they agreed to have dinner together at her house. And the next day, James went with Bob to the supermarket. The cat, as usual, sat on his shoulders and was not at all afraid of people. James thinks about this all the time and decides to buy her a bouquet of flowers. And when they were walking home, James saw Baz on the road, who was unconscious. James tried to revive him. Betty came running to help him. Soon the doctors arrived, and the bass was taken away by ambulance, but his pulse was not felt. At home, Betty and James had a frank conversation. Betty admitted that her beloved brother suffered from addiction and died in this house at the age of 28. He was a wonderful artist, and his paintings hang everywhere in the house. At the next appointment, James declares that he is ready to completely give up medications. But Vale insists that we need to continue the reception. James said that his ex-boyfriend Biss recently died of an overdose, and he doesn't want to end up the same way. James spent Christmas with Bob and Betty. They exchanged gifts and had fun. Later in the park, James told Betty that he wants for the new year to visit his father, though, and realizes that he doesn't like his company. Determined, James still went to his father. He took Bob with him. Before entering, James watched from the window how his father lived with his new family. From the outside, their lives and home seemed perfect. When his father opened it to him, it immediately became clear that James was not expected here. Especially his company did not like his father's new wife Hillary. They asked James to leave, as they are waiting for guests. James, along with Bob, left in upset feelings. He was bitter that his own father didn't need him. James and Bob continued to perform. People began to recognize them on the streets and treated them with great warmth. But one scumbag set a dog on them, and James did everything to protect Bob. Other people stood up for him, too. A skirmish began, the police intervened. And although James was not to blame, he was banned from performing for 6 months. On top of that, Betty saw James buying heavy medications at the pharmacy that relieve withdrawal symptoms. James tried to explain himself to her, but she wouldn't listen to him. However, James, although he could no longer earn a living from music, did not give up and found a job. Now he was selling magazines on the street. His faithful friend Bob was still sitting on his shoulders. Therefore, people willingly approached, took pictures, and bought magazines. One day a man approached them and introduced himself to journalists, saying that he wanted to write an article about them. But some of James' colleagues, out of envy, told the employer that James allegedly sold magazines on his territory and took clients from him. For this, James was suspended for a month, and he was again left without means of support. One day he tried to talk to Betty, but she was still very upset. James and Bob had nothing to eat. I even had to visit places where they give out hot lunches for the homeless. Eventually, James started performing in inconspicuous places, but Betty noticed him and yelled at him. After all, James could have been arrested at any moment. He tried to explain himself to his girlfriend again, but she left. Betty was very worried about James. She just couldn't come to terms with the fact that he suffered from addiction for many years, from which her brother died. James, as an exception, was still taken back to work. And she and Bob continued to sell magazines, attracting crowds of people. One day a woman with a child came up to them and said that she would like to buy a cat, to which James replied that he did not sell friends. While they were arguing, Bob was chased by a dog. James gave chase, but soon lost sight of Bob. He searched for him until nightfall, but was forced to return home alone. James couldn't sleep and was very worried about his friend. At the next reception he took away, he can't find a place for himself. It's been 2 days, and Bob's still gone. James fears that something could have happened to him. He can't eat, sleep, or play the guitar because he has lost the closest being in the universe. In the next scene, we see a woman working in the publication, discussing with a colleague a video from the internet, which has collected millions of views. The main characters of this video are Bob and James. The woman said that this story is worthy of a book. Meanwhile, James couldn't come to terms with what had happened, and blamed himself for the fact that Bob was lost. He even almost broke down, and did not take up the old thing again, but at the last moment he was able to stop. But when I went into the house, he found that Bob came back to him through the open window. James cried with happiness, and began hugging and kissing his cat. And very soon, he informed Vale that he was ready to give up all drugs. Val explained that it would be very difficult, but James was ready for this step. Before it all started, he told Betta everything through the door. And as soon as he was about to leave, his girlfriend still came out to him. She forgave him, and said that she would bring James food for the next few days, because he would not be able to leave the house. For many days James suffered from withdrawal syndrome. But still, thanks to Bob, he was able to overcome it. Now he has completely got rid of addiction. At the next reception, Val said how proud she was of him, and James didn't know how to thank her. After all, Val is the only one who once believed in him. Gave a chance for salvation. James' life was getting better, and Betty was going to return home to her parents. Because now she is not living her own life, but her brother's. Before leaving, she gave James a memorable gift, left a new address and phone number. And also gave him a letter that the lieutenant had left, a literary agent, when James wasn't at home. James met with literary agents who suggested that he write a book about Bob. But before starting work on it, James decided to meet with his father. He said he was completely done, and they apologized to each other for everything. After that, a large-scale writing work began. A huge number of people gathered for the presentation of James and Bob's book, including Betty, Val, and Father. James told his readers about how he got a chance at life, thanks to his best friend Bob, as well as thanks to the support of people who believed in him. And when James was signing his autographs and Bob's autographs, we can see how the real James Bowen approached him, with whom this story happened. Then the voiceover tells us that the book Street Cat Named Bob was published in 2012 and became a bestseller. James and Bob moved from social housing to their own house and together began to collect donations to homeless animals and people.